So this is the way how you're going to triple your damage in these games. But if you're dedicated and you're looking to improve as a player, you need to have... Hi, my name is Kajzoo and many of you may or may not know me. Shortly, I am considered one of the best players on the EU, and in this video, I would like to share some of the things I employ in my battles to have higher and more consistent damage output. Enjoy. 1. The first very important step is to segment every battle of yours into 3 parts. The first part is going to be your early game. Here, depending on your tank, you have to get into a position where you can get some sweet early game damage. For example, here I am playing on Glacier and I can shoot all the crossing tanks of the enemy that are trying to get into their positions. Early game damage should be 3-4 shots. Here you have to make sure you do not take any damage in return for your actions, since later on in the battle you have to use your full HP to trade shots with the enemy. The second part should be the mid game. Most of the time, when there is no more damage to be done from your position, from early game damage, you need to seek out where the majority of the enemy tank's HP is, and relocate to that flank. This is the golden rule for this segment. Always go where the bulk of the enemy's HP is, but make sure that the HP on that flank is very much accessible considering your own tank's capabilities. So stay mindful of this and do not venture onto the medium line flank with your Guerrilla 15, but for example if you're playing an Object 140 which can side scrape against heavies, you should all the time strive to get into those positions where you can farm all the heavies, either hold down or in the corner. Once again, mitigate the damage dealt and received. In case you are playing against tanks with higher alpha damage than yours, if you do decide to trade, make sure you can at least do 3 or 4 shots in return for the enemy's alpha. So for example, you're playing an IS-7 with an STB-1, the IS-7's reload is roughly 11 seconds while yours is roughly 5.5. That means that if the IS-7 fires and you can kite around the corner or go hold down, you should always trade 3 for 1 in this scenario. 3 times 360 equals 1080, while the IS-7 will only shoot for you for 490. Another important thing for you mid-game should also be increased situational awareness. Pay careful attention to the minimap in case your team is falling apart, seek out the best escape route from the flank, and rotate to a position from which you can do late game damage. In the final segment of your battles, you should still have HP. Use that HP to catch out turretless TDs that you can double track, thus minimizing incoming damage from them. Most of the time, such TDs are full HP. Since they camp all game long and rarely take a shot, this means that even if you take a shot from them at the late game, you can most of the time circle them with most tanks in the game and you can double track them, farming their juicy 2000 HP. To sum this up, having HP in late game is definitely a must. There are also 2 stats that you can pad in order to have better segmentation qualities. The first one is average spotted per game, which also obviously correlates to your tank's mobility into making your way into an early position or a flank. Either way, you should aim around 1.4 average spotted enemy tanks per battle. The second metric is your tank's average survival rate per battle. So as I explained you before, the longer you survive, the more damage potential is going to come your way. Thus, you need to do anything in order to get to the late game. Do not go into careless trades and rotate away from the falling flank if you have to. My survival rate on my top DPG tanks is roughly 45 to 50%. That means I am dire for almost every game I play, maximizing my damage in the late game. My motto is play aggressive, but not too aggressive. Casual gamers who play for fun and just don't care should not listen to this. But if you're dedicated and you're looking to improve as a player, you need to have high expectations of yourself. You need to aim higher. I will give you a goal. Aim to do at least twice your HP in damage every single game. For example, playing IS-3 with 1500 HP, aim to do 3000 every game. This way, the expectations toward yourself will rise up, which is going to end up being motivational, and you're going to try to make the whole thing work, which will essentially end up in you improving yourself by finding out in critical moments of your battles what you did well and what you did wrong. You have to defeat yourself. Alright, the cringe motivational speech is over. Many of you are going to butcher me for saying this, but if you really strive to maximize your damage in games, you have to use your teammates' HP for your own gains. But Kajzoo, how can you say that? You aren't even a team player. Alright Charlie, calm down. I played clan tournaments for many years. I captained my own team in Pro League while it still existed too, so I believe I have some kind of understanding how to be a team player. But in randoms you are on your own, where you are playing against 29 others, 15 in the enemy team whom you have to race to destroy, and 14 in your team whom you have to race in dealing damage. Listen to this last sentence again and you will understand. But honestly, as I mentioned before, just use your teammates to soak up damage for you. Make sure to use your rate of fire and farm the enemy tanks whenever they fire at your allies, thus saving your HP for the juicy late game carry. This guy? Little bit of a tunnel vision there, don't you think, Patton, huh? My next point relates to trading too. This is fairly obvious for most, but in case you are confronted by a Jagdpanzer or an FE-183 or a different TD with high alpha damage, make sure they always fire before you pick them, especially at close to mid-range. The Jagdpanzer, if he has heat, no matter what tank you're playing, is going to pen you 95% of the time for 1k plus damage, which you cannot afford to take unless we're talking about a late game carry where you're going to circle him around, tracking him in place. FETDs are roughly the same. They can one-shot you if you're in a medium tank, but they will also do significant amounts of damage to you if you're in a heavy, due to the ridiculously high hash alpha they have. Once these tanks fire, they are very weak and susceptible to taking damage, so make sure to farm them afterwards. Another key element of achieving high damage gameplay is the ability of increased awareness. In short, you always have to keep checking on the minimap. You're reloading after firing, check the minimap. You're going to flank in the early game, check the minimap. The tanks in front of you are dying, check the minimap. You need to go take a poo after the game, check the minimap. But seriously, you have to keep adjusting your battle tactics after taking into consideration what's happening around you and also on the other side of the map. If your flank is falling, for example, you have to draw up an escape route from which you can get into a safer position from which you can do your late game damage. The second key element of awareness, which is equally as important as using the minimap, is the ability of looking over your shoulders. I do this every single time when I'm reloading. You could see it in my last video and I even talked about it a little bit. But to explain it again, whenever you're reloading or in a higher dangerous situation, you have to keep looking at all the tanks around you, check what they're doing and see how you can adjust your positions and plays according to them. Make sure this becomes a habit after some time. Another piece of advice for World of Tanks is to just be patient. Nothing is happening in a battle and you're bored to death. Do not be making the first mistake of pushing into a situation from which you cannot come out advantageous. Make sure the enemy does that. Make sure the enemy does the mistakes first. If the game is slow, be patient. Do not panic. The damage will usually find you in one way or another. Intuition. Have you heard of the loader skill Intuition? This skill has been recently changed, so basically, whenever you switch shell types, if the skill is 100% trade on your loader, it will take 1/5 of your original reload time to switch to that shell type. This is super handy when it comes to playing as different tanks in different situations. Heavy tank is pushing towards you on the corner and you want to track him but have heat loaded? No problem, load the APC rounds, track him and do damage at the same time, just for 1/5 of your original reload. This is also super handy to load HE against waffles and light tanks, so make sure to have this skill on your loaders. One of my recently picked up habits is the auto-aim trick. Every time after I fire on someone, unless it's a corner or hold-down fight, I auto-aim them to have my cursor pointed at them at all times while I look around, thus sparing me the time to mind where my gun is aiming. This way I get to retain full situational awareness in the battles, and just before I reload, I disengage my auto-aim and make sure to re-aim my shots and pen them. Very useful if you can learn and get used to this way of playing. My final tip for you is to check out my settings video. I'm going to leave the link in the description. If you fine-tune your settings based on that video, it will make it much easier for you to play, which means you will achieve better results in the long term. Hope you guys enjoyed the video. If we reach 1000 likes on this, I'm going to make a second part. Thank you for watching. See you next time.